to who to vote for. And there was literally one person and like one of anything of all these options listed that said, do not vote for Sharon. So, of course, me being me, that was the very first bubble I circled.
Well, I will tell you this.
I was like,
At
she
least,
might be my hero. That she was the only one in all red and all caps that they went out of their way to say don't vote for. I felt like I could go into Bette Midler and start singing to her. She's my hero.
well, I mean, you can start singing. Somebody will win, and you'll need to do it because they're not doing what they need to do, and we need some new blood. So hopefully, again, we'll see what goes on with that. But we'll just get things started as I work with our technical challenges as we always have. And do the 14 jobs as Jody does 15. Wally's doing about 12. Kyle, I know you're doing about 13. And Estela, I don't even have to tell you. But we'll start off a little bit with you guys. Again, let's have some fun, good times tonight and really hone in on what we're talking about. So Jody, let's start with Kyle. Kyle, tell us a little bit about you, what's going on, and just get things going and what this is all about tonight.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on tonight. This is definitely a historic election, as we all know. A chance to preserve our democracy and protect the vote. There's a lot of things going on nationally and globally, but as the San Diego Education Association, I'm the vice president. I'm a teacher, and we are focused on our local races and on Prop 15 here in California, making sure that it passes the finish line despite the over $100 million that has been spent to spread lies about Prop 15 to try to get the public to try to pull the wool over the eyes of everyone.
So can you explain what it is?
Yeah, so Prop 15 is on the ballot. If you haven't voted yet, if it passes, schools and communities in California would receive an extra $12 billion a year by having large commercial property owners pay their fair share of taxes. Right now, when Prop 13 was passed, they snuck in this part about commercial property owners also not having their properties reassessed. So we have corporations like Disney and Chevron that are still paying taxes on what their properties were assessed in 1978, basically pennies on the dollar of other businesses that are across the street from them, where the property has changed hands since 1978, that are paying fair taxes. And what this situation has caused is that back in 1978, when Prop 13 was passed, 50% of taxes were paid by corporations and businesses, and the other 50% were paid by residential homeowners. And so what's happened since 1978, since Prop 13 was passed, is now today only 25% of the taxes in California of property taxes are paid by business and agriculture, and 75% are paid by residential, middle class, working class homeowners. And that has also caused a massive underfunding of our school system, to where in 1977, before Prop 13 was passed, we were 7th in the nation in per pupil funding for kindergarten through 12th grade. Now today, we are 39th in per pupil funding in the country out of 50 states. And that's in the richest state in the country. If California was its own country, it would be the 5th largest economy in the world. So it's unacceptable, and a true crisis of social justice and economic justice that our school funding is in such shambles in the richest state in the country.
So it's horrible that people want businesses to pay fair taxes. That's awful, right?
So the idea is that the businesses would all pay the same, because you could have, for example, there's a country club in Chula Vista where they are paying their taxes based on 1978, the assessment of their property. Meanwhile, you have a strip mall across the street that changed hands a few years ago, and they're paying their fair share. And you have businesses right next. We have a crisis of inequity where you have two businesses next to each other, owned by two different owners. One of them is they're both the tenants are both paying the same rent, but the owners of the buildings are paying very different taxes on the same square footage. And so it also creates a situation where certain people are able to continue charging exorbitant rents to their tenants, making huge profits. Meanwhile, the business next door might be owned by someone else who's barely breaking even though their tenants are paying the exact same rent as the person next to them. So yeah, like you said, Wally, it definitely is about creating equality across the board with how we pay taxes in California.
So what would your response be to someone that is a commercial developer, or more so like a landlord and a property owner, and they're not getting rent right now because of COVID? So they're already kind of behind the eight ball, so to speak. And now we're going to come at them with this and say, okay, well, now you need to pay more taxes. And they're like, well, wait a minute, like no one else, literally no other business got into a situation where they didn't, collect their outside of restaurants and things like that. But landlords and residential business owners and commercial were the only ones that the government said, okay, hey, you guys aren't going to collect rent right now. So that has been some of the questions I got from people on this. Well, why are we going to pay taxes when we've already not been getting our full income because of COVID-19?
Yeah, that's a good question, Jody. So Prop 15 specifically exempts any commercial properties that are assessed at less than $3 million. So they wouldn't be affected. So we're talking about large commercial properties. Agriculture is exempted. All residential properties are exempted.
All residential properties are exempted?
Yes, all residential
so
properties.
That's important for everyone to know, I think. Because that's been left out of this equation a lot. It was just like, well, look at all these businesses that are suffering. And
right. Yeah, that's definitely one of the, if you watch all the TV ads on the NOAA 22 people, that's one of the lies that they like to spread, is that it's going to affect residential properties. One of the many lies that they've been spreading with their Trump-like tactics of the No on 22 campaign of spreading
the 22 or 15?
Sorry, no on, well, both actually, but
I'm like,
no
wait, I'm confused.
Sorry, vote no on 22, yes on 15. Anyway, so, and then also just this idea that, to get to that commercial business, even if it is assessed at more than 3 million, you have to travel on public roads, right? To get to that business,
right.
Public sidewalks. Your employees are educated by public schools. So doesn't it make sense that all commercial property owners should pay their fair share at equal rates? If they're all benefiting from the public goods that the rest of us are investing in through our sales taxes, through our property taxes, it just makes sense. So it's not asking any commercial property owner to pay more than their fair share. It's just asking someone who purchased their property, maybe before 1978 and it hasn't changed hands. It's just asking them to be assessed and being paid the same percentage that all the rest of the commercial property owners are paying. So it's really, like I said, it's a question of equality. It's a question of fair share. And if you benefit from the public good, then you also have a responsibility to contribute to it.
And I think it's important for people to understand that don't deal with residential property. I see landlords talk a whole lot about current market value for when they're setting the amount of rent. Well, people say, well, you're not, like making it affordable to live. They're like, well, yeah, but our current market value is up here. But when you want to talk about taxes, like you just said, they're like, well, no, I bought this building for back here. So it's kind of like they can't have it both ways. It's like, and that's what this bill does, is it assesses it at their current market value, exactly what they want to do to tenants, correct?
Yes, and I thank you for bringing that up, Jody. That's actually another one of the lies that has been spread by the No on 22 campaign, which, by the way, has way more resources. Sorry, the No on 15 campaign that has way more resources than the Yes on 15 campaign. So they've been able to really dominate the airwaves with their ads and misleading ads on TV and radio. But one of the things that they've said is, if you raise the taxes on a commercial property owner, they're going to pass those increased taxes onto their tenants. but that doesn't follow the basic laws of capitalism, because a property owner is only going to charge rent for what the market can bear. If they raise their rent to an amount that's higher than the building next to it, that's the same square footage, guess which building the tenant's going to elect to rent from? Probably the one that's charging less rent for the same amount of square footage on the same block. And so that's another one of the lies that's been spread, is it's going to raise people's rents, when in fact it's only going to raise the property taxes for 10% of the commercial properties in the state of California. The other 90% are not going to see their taxes raised at all, or very insignificantly. 10% of the basically 90% of the increase is going to come from just 10% of these properties. Yeah.
Well, what's funny about that too, that you made me think about something else, is if the opposition to this is saying, you know, oh, you're going to raise your taxes and it's going to force them to raise their rent. It's like, well, no, because we already thought about that, because you can only raise your rent 5% now in San Diego County. I don't even know if it's all statewide, but so even if they can't raise a residential rent more than 5%, I think plus 2% or for utilities or something like that. But so it's always this, I notice a lot, the scare tactic of raise taxes. But even if it does raise tax, I think we need to, and Wally and I have talked about this before, is we're coming out of a bad situation with the global pandemic. And, you know, whether it be the city, the county, or, you know, state or the nation as a whole, a lot of our income comes from taxes. So at some point, we're going to have to put some of this money back. And we ask a whole lot out of teachers and then don't ever have money to pay them more. Now, the big question, the other one I get a lot is, which you've probably heard a million times, is, well, what happened to the lottery money? Wasn't the lottery money supposed to help the schools? Why do we need another proposition to help the schools? What's your response to that when you get that about what happened to the lottery money to help schools?
Yeah, the lottery money is a very insignificant part of school district budgets. It's definitely not enough to close the gap between California and other states that are funded at much higher rates per pupil than California, like New York and Massachusetts. You know, this is an issue that, like I said, it started with Prop 13 in 1978 and has only gotten worse over the years in terms of underfunding. It's also a lack of funding from the federal government, where we've created this situation where school districts are funded, you know, through the states, through, you know, property taxes. And it also makes it very difficult at the county level to do any kind of parcel tax where you can raise it that way. So that the people's hands have been really tied over the years in terms of actually finding ways to fund schools in a way that is going to be able to meet the needs of a state where we have the worst inequality in the country, right? We have very high poverty rates in California, in the richest state in the country. And that requires closing those historical gaps in funding that have led to inequities. That requires a massive investment in public education. And that just has not been something that has been done in the state. So, you know, Prop 15, when passed, it will make a dent in that gap, but we're going to need a lot more than Prop 15. We're going to need a stimulus bill, you know, which McConnell and the Republicans in the Senate have held up. You know, even with Prop 15, if this stimulus bill doesn't pass, federal levels, we're looking in San Diego Unified at a 10% budget cut for the 21-22 school year. So we're looking at cuts of massive historic proportions.
But don't uneducated people tend to vote Republican? So it's in the best interest of Republicans to keep people uneducated.
I mean, I would hope that that's not their cynical strategy, but I wouldn't put it past Trump's party to be thinking of that. If you resort to voter suppression, to basically destroy our democracy and align yourself with Russians and dictatorships. Sorry, nothing wrong with Russians. I'm half Russian. But if you align yourself with dictatorships all over the world, that just shows that they will stop at nothing to get their agenda, even though they are. The Democrats have won 8 out of 9, the popular vote in 8 out of 9 of the last presidential elections. So our country is set up in a very undemocratic way, which means that people that are pushing for justice, for racial justice, for economic justice, the deck is stacked against us. And so we just need to fight harder than the powerful forces that don't want to see a multiracial coalition of working class and middle class people, have power in this country.
Well, unless you're Little Wayne. Wheezy now, I guess, I feel like I'm watching I feel like Jordan Peele is going to come out at any minute and say this is a teaser to the next Get Out
horror
movie.
film.
Because it was 50 it was Ice Cube first and 50 and now Little Wayne. It's like, this is the dangers of when you have too much tears up. Okay, so Estela, I would like to know what your thoughts are on this prop, because you are running for a district seat in El Cajon.
Yes.
So let's hear from you, ma'am, what you think about this.
Thank you. First of all, I agree with Kyle. Working as an executive director for a fair housing agency, it's been really, the pandemic has really impacted. We received overwhelming calls of landlords and tenants. And I think everyone knows about the moratorium, and you mentioned something about AB 1482, which put a cap on the rents. Where I'm going with this is there's no affordable housing in the entire region. It was already a issue pre-COVID, and now after, during the COVID, we have more racial, economic, and social injustices in every community because these rents are exorbitantly high. And, Secures Act and CARES Act that gave millions to the entire nation is not enough. We run a rental assistance program, and half of the people don't qualify because this is the requirements that the federal government makes it harder for them to receive any benefits. Yet they say the Trump administration say they're helping. No, they're not. It's just having more and more people owe more money, and this pertains to landlords too, because landlords have mortgages to pay, mortgages that are just piling up as well. I think with this pandemic, we've been in it a good 10 months already. Can you imagine all the back rents that people are owing? And, these moratoriums didn't put a fix on it. It's just a temporary Band-Aid. So, I agree, that Prop 15 would help as far as, some economic justice. But, fair, affordable housing is a huge issue. This is why I chose to run as a candidate for District 4 in El Cajon. Because the Republicans have had a stronghold in our district. They hopefully, we're seeing the wave go towards blue, hopefully flip it, and, more of a diverse city council, more of an equitable representation. Our communities have drastically changed. The demographics have changed to mostly Arab and Middle Eastern communities and Latino communities and other. And right now, the leadership does not represent that. And this is why I'm running, because of the social, racial, and economic inequities that we have in our communities, particularly in housing.
Well, and you brought up a good point in the beginning about the rents, and I mean, my girlfriend works in property management, so I've seen it. Her mom owns property down La Jolla. That's her Social Security, because she was a model when she, there was no IMDb or SAG back in those days, so she bought property as her retirement. So when she first heard about capping rent and all that, she was like, "Oh, great! Now what?" Fortunately for her, she was getting rent. But my girlfriend's building, there's several people that already are owing $10,000 or $14,000 And so when I heard about this, I said, I don't even know who thought of this, because there was no economic way. Mathematically, it never made sense. Because if you already,
Exactly.
you lost your job and now you're going to just keep giving these IOUs and you're not working. And then all of a sudden, January hits and you're like, okay, this is all over. Start paying rent. Oh, and by the way, you owe us $72,000 for back rent and you make $15 an hour. When do you think you can start paying that off? It's never going to happen. And so now we're going to have all these courts backlogged, because then what's going to happen is all the eviction proceedings are going to start. And it's just, we have a mess ahead of us. And I just don't know, unless they start passing some of these bills, a way out of this. And like when we were voting last night, we were talking about, it's funny to me how many people that say, well, I don't want affordable housing in my neighborhood and I don't want rent control. And I said, well, you can't have both. It's one or the other. Either you have to allow, if you don't want it, you have your rent controls and you need to approve that and say, okay, the city, you guys go build buildings and you make the rent whatever you want. And then she said, oh, okay, I get it now when you explain it like that. I said, it's got to be one or the other. Obviously, we would like both, but you can't just say no to everything and then complain there's homeless.
Yeah, and mathematically, as you said, doesn't make sense, and that contributes to the homeless population. It's just a domino effect with every community that is vulnerable, and every community that we have, social inequities and disparities. 44%, 46%, I believe, the last data of renters that live in San Diego. That's huge.
That is, and
almost 50.
San Diego is now the third highest selling city in the nation. That report that came out a couple days ago. So yeah, guess what that means? The most expensive housing means the rents are still up here.
Exactly. And, you did mention, thanks to Governor Newsom's AB 1482, there is a cap on it, for the 5% plus 2%, as you mentioned. And now, starting September, landlords are already starting eviction proceedings, even though there's a protection right now. Like you mentioned, again, mathematically, it's not making sense. I don't care how much money is given from the CARES and the Secures Act. It's not helping people catch up at all. If anything, it's adding to the economic crisis that we have already. And you brought up a good point about landlords. This is their nest egg. This is what this is their pension,
Right.
So it affects them as well. Right now, we need the stimulus for landlords as well as tenants right now. And again, this is a crisis, and all due to it was already pre-COVID, and now it's another layer of economic crisis, and it adds to the racial and economic disparities that we face here in our region in San Diego. And like Kyle mentioned, we already have a high poverty rate. And I know that from all the statistics, El Cajon is one of the highest city, number one for poverty. So this is why I'm bringing up the affordable housing and how it's impacting our communities. And it's all tied in, with the Prop 15 and all the, bills that they're passing right now. It's not assisting. It's not enough. We need more, right?
Right. Well, and I think, a lot of it, like you had mentioned about with racism and Kyle, you as well, and the stereotyping. I mean, I love to play the game with people. I have a client that owns property and will do showings and promote them for him. And my favorite game to play is where do you think the most dangerous area of San Diego County is? And of course, they always say, oh, National City, oh, El Cajon, or Southeast San Diego. And the crime index actually showed Pacific Beach is one of the most dangerous areas in San Diego County. That's what happens when you have intoxicated young surfers, I guess. That's why there's no more PD Block Party, you fools. They can't maintain themselves. No, but I mean, and then you had La Jolla that had 2 drive-by shootings last year. So it's not, everybody has this mindset of like what a good neighborhood and a bad neighborhood. And in my opinion, any neighborhood could be good or bad.
Exactly.
But it's where other people that are in these top executive seats label them where they can get the funding from. And then that's what trickles down to where we end up with, not great schools or sports programs. And I'm a huge proponent in sports. I know not everybody is, but I mean, I was raised by a single mom, and sports literally probably kept me out of jail. I mean, there was, I had so much free time because my mom worked at a hospital, the night shift. So yeah, you leave a 17-year-old alone from 3 p.m. till midnight. That's a recipe for disaster.
And look how you turned out.
Yeah, like I know, but that's a whole lot of another show. But it's so this is where I just I really hope people look at this as investing in the city, investing in each other, because it's really easy to get on social media and say, hashtag blessed, or, all this ridiculous stuff that people do. But then, or my favorite is when they say, Wally, we've talked about this, how people will say like, oh, with Kaepernick, he was so disrespectful with that to veterans, as they're stepping over a homeless vet, to get into, a store. So, I mean, veterans also buy housing that they're not getting rent right now. And that was their nest egg when they got out of, that military. I'm sure you have a lot of military that are teachers, right?
Right, and you hit on a good point. Veterans also are on fixed incomes,
Right.
and so are a lot of our low-income communities, and veterans is a huge part of that community, and that's why they end up homeless too, because of the the disparities within the that community, and the seniors as well. And this adds on to the reason why we need more affordable housing, why we need rent control, and mostly why we need a bailout, really, for these rents, because they're out of control. And these moratoriums are not working. We've been given several extensions, and you're just extending a debt. 3 times it's been extended. It's just a debt that's going to be extended, and it's not going to stop evictions. In fact, evictions are going to be the next tsunami that's going to hit in a couple of months.
So what do you, I mean, here's the flip side of the coin to this. What do you tell the small business owner that's a property owner, like you said, that's owed all these months of rent, that they've had to put their, what they need on hold? I mean, it just, I don't know how we, without short of everything being an Etch-a-Sketch that we shake and make a do-over, how we get out of this fairly for everybody.
I think, just like they're giving the Secures Act and the CARES Act to some of, the counties, the cities, I think the federal government has to step in. This is no fault of anyone, because of this pandemic. They need to step in and give some of these mortgage, landlords some mortgage relief. And I know that there's a lot of organizations who are part of that, trying to push this forward. There's been several bills that haven't been successful, but this is the only answer. I mean, they're bailing everybody. They're bailing out their friends, right? So why shouldn't they bail out, the landlords and tenants? They know this is a huge issue. A couple of weeks ago, I was on a national call, and all over the nation, I don't remember the statistics, this is the number one crisis, the housing crisis, because of no one is able, everyone lost their jobs. We all know that. And it's just like a domino effect. You have to pick between feeding your family or paying your rent. And now that children didn't go to school, they eat more, right? So,
Right.
it just escalated one issue after another, and again, becoming more of an economic crisis, and unfortunately, racially as well. Because it hits the low-income, vulnerable communities of color mostly, because of, there was already a pre-crisis to begin with.
So, Estela, what would you say to the No on 15 people of what their arguments are? I mean, if you, what would you say to them of why it's a bad idea to vote no? For any voters that are considering voting no on that proposition.
It's only a certain percentage that are going to have their taxes raised. They always tell a different flip side of the story, like Kyle said. They don't read entirely. the good point about the residential. You know, I don't think many of them know that. Otherwise, they would, you know, be swayed to vote yes. So, you know, I think that because they don't know all the facts and how it's going to affect them, you know, always the fine line with those percentages and who it's going to affect, whose taxes it's going to raise. You know, everyone's with the preconception is going to raise their own taxes, but you have to read these, and we all know reading these propositions, you have to read them carefully because they twist and flip the script, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, my solution is we should just, like Wally and I have said, we should just become president. Then no matter what, we only pay $750 in taxes, and
And we don't have to follow any laws either.
Yeah. Then I can have a hooker too, named Stormy. Anyway, that's a whole other show. Okay, so
You got to pay her off for 130,000.
oh, see, that was more than the taxes. Damn it! I hate when
remember
that
that-
happens.
Remember that 15% corporate tax that Trump did? You know, he should do the same for us, you know?
Right. That's what I'm saying. I thought you were about to say there was a 15% tax on hookers. I was like, now there you go. Now we're going to make some money. But in all seriousness, we shouldn't be joking about hookers, because I do want to talk to both of you about something that is a very serious problem in San Diego County that a lot of people just kind of ignored until recently. We started seeing a trend more on social media, and that's sex trafficking. I would think with us not being in school, that makes a larger danger for these young girls and boys, I guess, to get kind of recruited into this. What are your thoughts on that, and how, because I know you have some experience working with some of these projects, right, Estela? So
Yes.
this is becoming, you know, in the 80s we worried about cocaine. Now I got to worry about teenagers getting taken and sold for money.
Yes. Yes, this is a huge issue. And right now, you know, with the pandemic and, you know, children being at home and being on the computer, you know, being more on the virtual, you know, Zoom calls and having their laptops at all hours of the day, you know, there's the predators that are online. And this has been the new trend now. And of course, everyone is concerned about COVID. So they have new strategic ways of luring, you know, girls and women and also men also are lured in through you know, through the internet, through online, and through social media. So I don't know if I answered your question.
Well, I got a question to ask, and Wally too, because Wally, listen, you've always been steady throughout the years in your life, and looking at, you know, your area. How are the Congress, I mean, how are your district representatives for you? How have they treated your community, you feel, your zip code or whatever?
No, I've been happy with the people who have been representing my area, and they seem to be actually caring. But again, most of the people who are in charge here are not conservative Republicans.
Well,
That's true. And one of the things I look at, because my camera wasn't on, I'm looking great. One of the things I want is, like, Kyle, for example, me and Wally have been working on esports education, right? Making sure computer science, programming, graphic arts, and we can go on and on. We've been really a focal point for me because a lot of our minority communities don't know how to program. You know what I'm saying? And the STEAM programs are made for us, but technically, the kids who already have the technology and know-how are the ones that get to take advantage of that. And so for you, Kyle, the question I have to ask is, what are you looking to do? Are you guys looking into more of the, not said esports, but more of the electronic education / you know, engineering / you know, robotics? Is there, I noticed that Hoover's doing some things. I noticed obviously you got High Tech High and those things, but how have you seen the change in that, and what improvements can we make in communities that don't get this?
Yeah, so for me, you know, as a former, I taught at an alternative school, and I taught an economics class for high schoolers, where they got to plan out their futures and take the quiz and see what their skills and passions were, and be able to match their skills and passions to future careers. And I saw the power of that program and the power of having a multitude of options available for youth, so that whatever their passion is, they have opportunities to hone their skills in that area and be able to leave high school already with a plan for how they're going to be able to support themselves and support their family going forward by making a career in an area that aligns with their passions. And so I think in order to do that, we need more funding for schools, because the first thing that gets cut in schools when there's a budget cut, like what we're anticipating for next school year and what we saw during the last recession in 2009, 2010, is they cut the after school programs, like the one you're describing of the esports and robotics. They cut arts classes. They cut anything that didn't align with the English and math standardized tests that school funding was based on at the time. Luckily, that's not the case anymore, but we still have never recovered from the cuts from 2009. So we need stuff like Prop 15 so that we can provide a wide array of opportunities for youth to really follow their passion, whatever it may be. Because the teachers are out there. We want to teach in these specific areas. Your organization wants to provide things, provide trainings for youth and education, but we're constrained by the limited funding. And so we need Prop 15. And CTA has also supported a wealth tax for California to say, if you have more than $10 million, then you need to pay a tax on that wealth because you benefited from the public good, and you need to pay it forward for the next generation. And also a higher income tax as well on people that are making more than $250,000 a year. They need to also pay their fair share. They're not struggling right now during this crisis. The wealth of Jeff Bezos has doubled. He's gone from a 60 billionaire to 120 billionaire since March. They need to do their part. The wealth is out there. It's not a question of lack of resources for why we can't offer things like esports and robotics in our schools. It's just a question of how we distribute our resources as a society. And I think we can point to examples like Scandinavia, where people are taxed at much higher rates than here in California, and at the same time, there's much less poverty, and their schooling system is the best in the world. In countries like Finland, where they require teachers to have masters, where only the top 10% of students can even be teachers, and where they get starting salaries of $100,000 a year, in these countries. So we have a long way to go in the United States as one of the richest countries in the world. It truly is a travesty that we do not have also one of the best educational systems in the world. And it all really comes down to how we tax people and how we distribute our wealth as a country.
Well, and one of the final questions I want to ask you is, when you say that about the wealth, and I've heard not just with this bill, but with other things where people that are wealthy will say, well, why should I get punished for doing well? Why do I have to pay more? I mean, I could have just been a loser and not done anything and paid the taxes to everyone else. I mean, why do you think that it's, fair, for lack of a better word, that somebody that has a higher income pays more than somebody that doesn't? Because that was what was asked to me a couple of days ago. Like, well, wait, if you're going to push all this equality stuff, then why isn't like taxes and all that equal? And I was like, wait, what? I'll save that question for Kyle.
I think it's an equality of opportunity thing. Right now we don't have equality of opportunity in the United States. And that billionaire that owns the factories, they went to public education. And if they didn't, then their workers in the factory did. And the rest of us are paying our fair share of taxes. And so they also need to pay their fair share as well, because they didn't make it to where they are in life by pulling themselves up by their bootstraps. They were supported every step of the way by the public good. And so they need to also contribute their part as well to the public good.
Well, that you explained it perfectly, because if the community is invested in them, it's time for them to give back. So where can more people find info on the proposition and voting for it? We only got a few days left, guys.
Yeah, so they can go to yes15.org, and you can also see there's a website on there, a link on there of debunking the lies about Prop 15 that you see in all the commercials and radio ads that you hear. So definitely click on that. And then check out our San Diego Education Association Facebook page. It has our endorsed candidates, which includes Dr. Sharon Whitehurst Payne that you just mentioned is a Republican public enemy #1. So it's #1 of the people that we're supporting her. And then also Richard Barrera and Sabrina Basso, who are also Democrats and pro-public education and pro a science-based school reopening, so that we can do this safely and get everyone just basically getting back to meeting the needs of all of our community members.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
important thing. And Estela, I wanted you to touch on that as well about the safe reopening of schools.
Well, I believe right now, with the science and the data, there is a lot of confusion. And I know that there was some numbers in North County about some schools that were reported where the children did get, COVID. So that is a question that, I've been contemplating whether it is a good thing, because, children do need that social interaction. But at the same time, is it worth, your child being ill or exposed to others? And the same token, the teachers, I've heard teachers also complain, if they don't do their job, then they can look for another one if they don't comply with going back to the school. So it just depends how you look at it, health versus, social interaction, and even, how it's impacted our school system right now, because, these students are going to be behind a year, and, teaching them virtually is not the best practice. I've heard it from many, many students and many, many parents, that it's not working virtually for many reasons. So, everyone's wish that, this pandemic would soon go away, but meanwhile, we have to think of innovative ways to keep our children in the classroom. And I like some of the models back east where there's children that go to school like half a day and they do a lot of distancing. I think some of those models are working. So I would propose a model to keep students safe and keep teachers also safe,
Estela,
Yeah.
Estela, I love you, boy. I know what kept me safe going to school was that belt from my dad. That's what I'll tell you. You better have the chicken pox, the flu, or something, right? But I'm being silly, but you know what I'm saying. We going to school.
Yeah.
And again, I'd like to thank you. And Kyle, again, I'd like to thank you one more time for your time and again, your energy and actually sticking through our trials and tribulations, but also giving us that education that we need. And we'll look forward to speaking with you in the future. All right.
Thank you. Thank you. Likewise. Thank you very much
No,
for all of
no,
that.
no, you ain't going nowhere. You stay right there.
All right, thank you. Thank
Thanks,
you so
Kyle.
much for having
See
me.
you.
We
We'll
got
get all
plenty
the
of time.
links up for the yes, everybody on the
Yes,
feed
that is
know
Kyle right there. You can take
exactly
care
where
of
to
that,
go.
All right, there we go. Folks, I apologize. Like I said, if you only knew, but it is the internet. Wally, quick
Yes.
question. When you think about Estela, like you think about El Cajon, just in your mind, how was El Cajon to you? Has it grown in the last 10 years? Because me and you used to drive past El Cajon, actually. We used to go to Alpine, but, stop in El Cajon occasionally from that studio. But what did you think of El Cajon at that time?
Well, El Cajon, I remember, used to be a lot more run down, and it's gotten, I think, much better in the main street. Before the pandemic hit, of course. I haven't been there since then, but it seemed like El Cajon was getting better, just cleaning up the stores. There was less just run down places and more interesting restaurants and shops that you might actually want to go into, not just 99-cent stores or thrift shops that look run down and tired. So I thought El Cajon was doing okay as far as what they used to be like.
Well, and thank you for that question, because I've been there 40 years. Besides
Wow.
besides the demographics changing, right now, you're right, there was some economic growth, but now with the homeless population, there's a lot of homeless camps. And that is really sad to see, because we have blighted areas in El Cajon. We have properties that could be, invested into, again, affordable housing. I'm coming back to, making more units, because these camps, and we know they're all over in San Diego region, but even this morning outside of my office, there's someone sleeping on the floor. It has to be addressed. It's a health issue as well as a housing crisis.
Now, where are these homeless people coming from? They're not just all El Cajon residents, right?
No, that's a big question. I think they just, migrate from city to city, and, um, you know, city government, doesn't have a plan in either city. I think everyone, reads the ongoing models about, the motels opening, for the homeless and the convention center. We have short-term sheltering, but what about the long-term shelter? So, I would like to have a model where we have resources to not just shelter homeless population, but give them a holistic approach, address their mental health needs, address their health needs, train them for a job, meanwhile, getting them back on their feet. We have to address it as a holistic approach, because, these people just didn't want to be homeless. They just didn't wake up. They all have a personal life. They all have a story. And I believe it's our duty as a community to assist and empower. And there's a lot of resources, a lot of organizations that are interested. It's just the city governments that are not interested. And although, I get sick and tired of everyone running on, oh, I'm running because I'm going to assist the homelessness, and once they get into office, their interest is gone. And that happens all,
Exactly.
right?
That's my biggest pet peeve. I say that all the time. Is like, stop using the homeless and the military as your bargaining chips to get into office, and they're not making any real solutions at all. And a lot of times those homeless are military. We've got to stop criminalizing. I mean, listen, I don't know if it still is, but I remember there being a stat when I had a client out in El Cajon that El Cajon used to be the crystal meth capital of the world. And I was like, think about that. Not the nation or the state, of the world.
Well, I want to add something, and I just have to add it. It's had a
do it, girl.
It has had a strong hold of ultra conservative Republicans that just don't want anyone else to have power or control. And just for example, I was in the redistricting commission about 4 years ago. To redistrict. Now we have districts. Well, they didn't want to gerrymander, but they did end up gerrymandering. District 1, where they all live, is twice as big as the districts that they made 2, 3, and 4. And although they hired their own map, or whatever you call them, the ones that do the redistricting, and we had ACLU out there, they still reigned their power. They still ended up with their little white boys club, little boys club, excuse me, little boys club, backroom deals. And this has to stop. The power has to go to the communities. The power has to go to the people. And I just had to say that, this is what is the issue in El Cajon. And yes, you're completely right. There's a meth issue in East County, Santee, Lakeside, Spring Valley, the whole 9 yards. But I think the most issue right now is the racial inequity, again, I'm going to call it, because we have a diverse community, but unfortunately we have nothing but ultra conservative Caucasians up there with their privilege. And that has to change. That has to stop.
A lot of it. And I should have added to the meth stat was that it's primarily used by Caucasian Americans or Caucasian.
Exactly. Thank you.
So
Yes.
I meant to throw that in there, that with the highest meth, it's also highest used by Caucasians. But I do want to ask you, because you had brought up about kind of like the boys club. We've all talked about this, and it's the elephant in the room of what are your thoughts on this new group that's called Defend East County?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, no, thank you
Let's
for
go there.
Yeah, no, let's go there. I went there 2 days ago in a forum because they were asking the question, what are you going to do about, these hate groups? And I belong to the Anti-Hate Crime Coalition, and they've been now defined by law enforcement as a hate group. And
really?
Yeah.
That's
so
good
that's
to
to know. I was at a vigil for Alfred Alongo, who got killed maybe 4 years ago.
I remember him.
Yeah, and they showed up. They had the audacity to show up right in front of the police department, and the police department didn't do anything. They didn't do anything, and they were, this hate, spreading hate, turns into hate crimes. And unfortunately, everyone acts after the fact. You can't allow that to happen. You can't allow this to be normalized. This Defend East County goes all over the place. And, I'm sorry, they don't define East County. There's not everyone in East County is racist. There are good people. But unfortunately, we've gotten a bad rap. We have Clan T as well, and
That's one of my favorite names, though. I have to say.
We have to change that, and we have to take the steps to do that, and that's why I'm there. That's why, if people would tell me, why do you live out there? Well, someone has to live out here, and someone has to change it.
But I relate with you because I grew up in
Jody,
it's avocado capital of the world, and the Metzgers, the guy who punched Geraldo, lived there.
Oh,
So
yeah,
we
yeah.
never lived down that reputation. Anytime I went somewhere, they're like, "Oh, you must hate black people because you're from Fallbrook." I'm like, no.
Yeah,
And
y'all do. Yeah, y'all.
And we haven't even talked. Yeah, we haven't even talked about Hunter. Don't get me started with Hunter.
No, we ain't gonna leave you alone. I don't want you. Well, Matt, we got Matt Klink out here. Matt, thank you for joining us. I know it's a little bit late for us, and me, Wally. We got Jody Taylor from 65 Media and District 4 runner Estela. Estela, again, thank you for your fire and your time, and it is that time. Matt, how are you doing this evening?
Oh, I'm great. How are you? Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
We can hear you clearly. Yes, sir.
Fantastic.
So Matt is from, he represents and I'll let you get more into the details of the flip side of what we were talking about with Proposition 15. So I would just like you to kind of, if someone was on the fence about whether they were going to vote for this because they want money for teachers in the schools, and rightfully so, where are you guys at with not wanting that?
Well, obviously I represent the No on Prop 15 campaign. So first of all, thank you for having me this evening. Let me get straight to the point. So the point that you just made about money for teachers. So Proposition 15 is the largest property tax increase in California, and less than or about 30% of the money, if Prop 13 passes, would go toward education, with no guarantee that that money finds its way into the classroom, just like the lottery. So now let's break that down so that everybody can understand that. The yes side says that, oh, only the rich will pay, that only rich property owners. This is an $11.5 billion property tax, not M with a million, B with a billion. The reality of the matter is that there aren't enough rich people to pay that much money. And what happens is, imagine the mall owner in San Diego. So this mall owner gets a massive new property tax bill because the mall gets reassessed. Every single small business owner in that mall has a lease that requires that property owner to pay for property tax increases. So guess what happens? That property owner passes that lease or that tax increase down to the small business owner. Now, what does the small business owner do? They either go out of business, they lay off employees, which is why Pepperdine University has said that Prop 15 will cost 120,000 jobs, or they raise their prices so that Subway sandwich that you want is going to cost more money. That bottle of Coke that you want is going to cost more money. Those cool flip-flops that you want to wear at the beach next summer, they're going to cost more money.
But Matt, quick question I asked you, Matt, isn't that everything? Like, honestly, isn't that inflation? Right. Like, doesn't cars cost more money than they cost 30 years ago? I'm being silly, but I'm asking a question.
Yeah, well, look, inflation is a natural economic phenomenon that happens. This is an $11.5 billion tax increase with no guarantee that the money is going to go where they say it's going to go. And to make it even worse, the assessors, the ones that have to implement this measure, unless it's defeated, they oppose it because they say that what the measure requires them to do can't be done. This is a horrible idea. That was a bad idea before COVID-19. With COVID-19, it makes no sense whatsoever.
Wally, once you hear this right now, just based on the two opinions, what is your opinion on what you've heard?
My opinion is that there's always two sides of everything, and I have no idea who's right and who's wrong and which facts are more important, but also that no matter what you choose, there's going to be consequences. And it's a matter of, are the benefits better or than the consequences or not? So it's easy to say, well, one side
is wrong, one side is right.
So real quick, so education already receives 40% of the entire state of California's budget.
So where does the money go?
Well, that's not my responsibility. I'm just telling, well, I can tell you where a lot of it goes.
Okay.
It goes to
I was like, don't act like you don't know. Now, come on.
it goes to bloated retiree healthcare and pension plans that doesn't go back into the classroom.
But
So-
Matt, let me ask you a question. And again, I'm asking questions. I know it's just time.
Yeah.
I'm asking questions. I look at right now, and Estela, I know you're here, so I'm not going to leave you out. It's baby boomer time, right? You're building more convalescent homes and senior, homes right now than ever, obviously based on our generational gap and obviously the where the wealth is, right? I mean, obviously with the retirees compared to the millennials, let's say, right? I'm in the 40 somethings, right? I'm at the last of my 49. So, I mean, I'm looking at the boogers on both sides of it and look at the napkin and still using it. But Matt, on the nice side is, you're right. I have no right or wrong, but Estela, I'm gonna ask you this. And again, I'm just asking from your view, what do we need to do to have better education based on these measures? What do you see?
I see that a lot of it goes to administrative overhead. And I say that because some of these superintendents make exorbitant amounts of money. For example, El Cajon, he has the largest salary, the highest salary. And we have some issues in El Cajon because most of that funding doesn't go to the students. It goes to, and I agree, some of it does go to the pensions and to the teachers, but not all of it. Most of it, I think, goes to administrative overhead. And I heard earlier talk about the lottery. Well, that money was supposed to be for the schools, and what happened to it? Again, the way it's administered, the way that it's administrated, that's the key right there. Yes, there's lots of funding, but how is it being administered?
How many elections have you heard? If you just give us more money, we'll solve the problem. And then 2 years later, if you just give us more money, we'll solve the problem.
It's like a kid that has a drug problem, kind of. Like, if you just give me this one time, I promise I'll get it together. I'm just kidding. Okay, but I do want to ask you, Matt, really quick.
Yeah, of course.
You've got to have a solution. If you're voting no on this, like Dane said, I mean, we still have this problem. So
Sure.
if you were in charge of this and let's say no passed, it was like, okay, so what's your solution then?
Well,
We still got schools without air conditioning. We still got all these problems.
Well, and a couple things. So one, we got to get the kids back in school for one. So,
safely, right? You're saying safely.
Yeah, but I think that can be done. There are other states in the United States that are doing it safely. So that being said, before COVID hit, California had a $22 billion budget surplus. So it's not as if we didn't have any money, but the money wasn't going back to the schools because they're already getting 40%. So what the solution is, maybe if we had some comprehensive education reform where we could demand results and kids actually were able to read and perform mathematics at grade level instead of failing upward, which is what the public education system unfortunately does, then people would be willing to spend more money on it. But look, education funding since like the 1990s has gone up $93 billion. It's not a shortage of money. It's not going to the right places. And I don't know where the bodies are buried in education spending because education is funded at the local level and it gets state money. But the local jurisdictions, they've got some big problems that papering over it by saying, trust us, we can fix this problem with more money. If you believe that, I got another bridge in San Diego I want to sell you.
Or a wall.
I agree with that completely because money is never the answer. It's always how to spend the money wisely. And
Exactly.
to give more money to somebody, if they're not even spending what they have wisely, it's not going to help the problem. It's going to help them get richer. It's going to help them take more benefits, more vacations, and buy more nice things. But it's not necessarily going to help solve the problem.
But isn't that what Estella's saying is that we need to limit like some of these salaries on the high up administrative people and, you know, give it to the teacher. And shouldn't all the schools kind of be making the same? Because what's my perk then to go teach in La Jolla if I could make more and have a cruise job than to go where it's less teachers, more kids, and maybe a, you know, a struggling school or what some people would consider a bad neighborhood school.
Yeah,
I
and,
mean,
you know,
don't
Jody,
we end all that by equating the money to all the schools?
well, look, again, that's not I am not an expert at that. What I am an expert on is Prop 15. And, you know, we've talked about education, but let's talk about the small business community. You know, you've probably seen some of our ads on television set on the TV and on radio. I mean, look, from a small business perspective, this is absolutely devastating. And the other side says, oh, well, we exempt small business. They exempt small business if they meet some very restrictive conversations. They have to own real property. They can't be part of a chain store. I mean, it's like there's a small little sliver that they deem small businesses, but everybody else has to pay. And the true sad thing, and it will impact San Diego because of your agricultural industry there, they say, oh, we don't tax agriculture. Well, they don't tax agricultural land, but any structure on that land. So irrigation systems, barns, processing plants, mature fruit and nut trees, grape vineyards, that's all taxed. So the wine you drink, the almonds you eat, and by the way, California is the United States sole supplier of almonds. Those almonds will go up in price. So
Well, I'm voting now just because of that. I'm just kidding.
Well, Wally,
Dude, don't be messing with my wasabi almonds, man.
And I know.
When you look at Wallace, when you look at education, and we obviously being obviously a state, I don't know what state level, college level, whatever. Don't you think that this affects you one way or the other? I mean, I know you have an either here or there, but obviously, if it goes to yes, do you think you're going to make more money? And if it goes to no, you're going to make less money? I mean, do you think of that at all?
No, I assume that if the schools get more money, again, the administrators are going to get more money. I don't think the teachers will. I don't think the classrooms will get more equipment. I don't think they'll hire more teachers. I don't think they'll buy more equipment. They'll lower classroom sizes. I think the money will just simply evaporate into the pockets of the administrators. And so,
And I think that when I saw that, like when we talked to the other guy running for, I forgot the gentleman's name now, I'm sorry, boss, but people running for Lemon Grove they're saying, what, 50% or more of their revenue is going towards the sheriff, you know?
Right.
And so, again, you're looking at, well, man, we could take some of that money and put it towards education, even though their budget might be different. Again, me not knowing, obviously, there's no high school in Lemon Grove either, so there's a different type
There's not a high school in Lemon Grove. I didn't know that.
No,
hey, let's just ask Dunkin' Donuts. Let's ask Dunkin' Donuts for the money because they just made an $11.3 billion deal. I mean,
I saw that. Although the company that's buying them agreed to buy their debt too, so it's probably not not 11.
That's where that donut hole comes
from. Right, Mr. Stella, when you for you, if you could be improving some things in education, where would you want to? And I know you talked a little bit about it, but where is your, let's say, 2 or 3 main focuses in education in your district?
I would focus more on equipment and focus more on teachers, getting high quality teachers. I think she made a good point in regards to, you know, teachers that teach in La Jolla versus teachers that teach in another, you know, poverty stricken city. You know, that is a denominator where, you know, they're going to go where the wealth is at. So I would even out, give some of that to some teachers, qualified teachers. And I want to raise the bar, you know, for our students, our achievement. That is my goal, the best interest of our children. I think that's where the money needs to go. And I'm so sick and tired of these bonds. You know, every time there's a bond measure on the ballot, and that bond is not helping our students. You know, if they say it's going to go to improvements in the schools, but we still have schools that are, you know, are lacking structural, you know, they need air conditioning or they need windows, you know, it's always an issue. And how much is enough money to go towards the schools, right?
They need lunch. Like, I was horrified when I was reading these stories about kids were going to get lunch and like had like debt. I was like, what? I mean, it's funny. I mean, people don't really think unless they've experienced in some way of the differences of different schools. I mean, I remember years ago, I was coaching. I went to coach flag football for La Jolla Country Day School. And, this is being from women's football, who all women are broke that play football, and, other schools. And, I'm telling the kids where they could go to get their mouthpieces. And, here, if you go to this place, they're on sale and they're on a budget. And the VP comes up to me, the vice principal, and he goes, hey, you're at La Jolla Country Day. I need to tell them where to get stuff on a budget. I was like, oh, my bad. I forgot where I was. So it matters. I mean, when you have kids that don't have any challenges of buying sporting equipment, down to a kid that might be over at Lincoln that doesn't even have money for lunch, that has to change.
Yeah, Jody, what you're hitting at, I think, is super important. And you can't tell me that with a nation state like California that historically has fairly responsible budgets, although they do the government does spend a lot. These are problems that are multi-generational at this point. And every 2 years, we are told by the same groups that if we just pass another tax increase, that this problem is going to go away. And we'll solve this problem, which is, it's at a certain point, I think that the voters are kind of realizing, show us the results. And if you do even an objective look, now I'm here by all, it, to talk about why Prop 15 is a bad idea. But if you even look objectively at the state of public education, it is not a money question. It needs to be rethought dramatically. And Prop 15 that the proponents, which are the teachers unions and the SEIU, the groups that want the government to get more money with no accountability, they will say this will solve the problem. This is nowhere close. And oh, by the way, the thing I didn't mention, that this would remove commercial and industrial property from Prop 13's protections. If they pass Prop 15, guess what they're coming for next? Your home. They will increase property taxes on homes to market value. And they say, that's not what Prop 15 is all about. We have a 42-year history of documented sayings by people they opposed Prop 13 in 1978, and they're supporting Prop 15 now. They have said their goal is the complete repeal of Prop 13's protections. So
we talked about that a little bit earlier, about raising that with the property taxes, and it was for rentals. Now, remember, with because I have seen on some of the commercial would trickle down to the renters and make their prices get raised. But in San Diego County, at least, renters rent can't be raised more than 5% anyway. So that wouldn't really affect So
that's for residential property. So, but if you're a small business, and we know from the NFIB that 78% of small businesses lease the property where they conduct business,
right? They
have a triple net lease, and those lease arrangements say that the tenant is responsible for tax increases, maintenance, and insurance costs. So once Prop 15, unless it's defeated, if it goes through, now commercial and industrial property is no longer under Prop 13's property tax protections of a 2% annual increase a year from your base purchase price at 1% tax rate. So now they come after homeowners and rental properties. That's when you get massive tax increases on anybody that owns a home or anybody that is a renter in an apartment. And they say, oh, we would never do that. Really? Just like the lottery, just like the gas tax. No, they would never do that. Trust us, they say. You know what? Prop 13 has worked. It's provided predictability and stability for Californians since 1978. And I remember being a little kid. I'm only 53, but I remember being a little kid and hearing my dad say, if Prop 13 doesn't pass, we lose our house because we can't pay the property taxes. And that's what spurred the property tax revolution. This is another attempt with Prop 15 to unwind that protection. In California, look, we already pay the highest gasoline taxes, the highest energy costs. We have a third of the nation's poor. We have the highest homeless population in the nation. So we want to make things more expensive? Where's the logic in that?
Because Wally wants everyone to move. He just wants the state to himself. That's what he's all for
But no,
that.
see, again, I agree with you, Matt. One of the problems I have with all of these laws is they say one thing, but there's always consequences and the way they're implemented. And so they could say, we want to save puppies. And everyone's like, oh, yeah, who wouldn't want to save puppies? And then in the law, it says, well, not then we're going to drill offshore for oil. Well, it's like, how did that come in? It's always so confusing. And I think that's one of the reasons why so many people don't vote is because they're confused and they don't understand the consequences because there's all of these hidden little tricks that whoever is supporting the bill is putting in there. And that's what gets to me, that how do you make an accurate and educated decision when you have people who can make valid arguments for both sides of every issue?
Yeah, I mean, look, the voters face a tough one, and there are 12 initiatives on the ballot this time. And that's just at the state level. San Diego's got local ballot measures plus local candidate. I mean, you got a hotly contested mayor's race. No, you're right. Voting is it's an obligation and a responsibility that everybody, we hope, will turn out and vote if they haven't already. But it's tough. There's a lot of information out there that can be confusing. So, I would urge you, go to noon15.org, which is our website. Look at that information. There's a ton of news coverage about this. The San Diego Union Church has editorialized against it. So there's a lot of really good information out there if the voters want to find it. But ultimately, after reading it, I think that they'll be convinced that the proper course of action is a no vote on Prop 15.
All right, guys. So we'll have obviously both propositions info on there. Matt, if anyone wants to reach out to you guys, is there a contact page if they have more questions? Like
Absolutely.
Wally just it's confusing. It is. I mean, I was completely stressed out last night.
So yeah, the best bet, go to the website. There's a ton of fact sheets and infographics and TV commercials, but there's also a contact us screen where you can ping us with info. If you got a question, we'll get someone to answer you. We've got a bunch of people in San Diego that are very active on the campaign. Some small business owners and restaurant owners. So yeah, we're here to provide information because we want as many no votes as possible.
Well, folks, again, we'd like to thank you again. This is our Notes from the Underground show, special edition. We also, and again, making sure our internet works, but I will make it update as I do as soon as I get home. Estela De Los Rios, thank you for your time. Where can we go and support you and let people know a little bit more about you before voting day?
Please, yes, thank you again for the opportunity. EstelaDelosRios.com. De Los Rios, DELOSRIOS.com. Estela, ESTELA. So please, yes, I'm a candidate for District 4, El Cajon. I'm about to change El Cajon, flip it, and get some racial, social, and economic justice.
Yes, we like that.
Wally, any last words, Wally?
Yeah. When I see these issues and people coming up with ideas like our guests here, that makes sense. They're saying they're using logic, they're using facts that I can look up, that I can verify. So I respect that. I do not respect outright lies that can easily be disputed, and then people still insist that they're right, even though it's easily proven wrong. So again, many of these issues, I hear both sides, and I'm swayed by both sides. They both have good arguments, and I can verify. So I don't know, is something going to give more benefits than consequences, or will it give more consequences than benefits? And again, I don't think either side really knows because it hasn't happened yet. And by the time it happens, it's too late.
Well, that's a good point, because I mean, listen, in 2015, if you were on a job interview or you were an entrepreneur and somebody said, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Honestly, did we all see ourselves here?
sitting in my home office for 7 months. Yeah.
Right. Did I think I was going to dress
On a
like Michael
2 week
Jackson to go to the grocery store and have to be on a racetrack in Vons? No. Did
That's
we
gonna
think
be
we were
2
going to be doing
weeks.
this show from our house? No.
Right, right. 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and now it's 7 months or 8 months, and we still don't know what's going on. And I mean, I try to look
So
at this in
Wally's
a bit.
right.
I'm trying to be like this and try to look at sensibly like the chicken pox, which I know it's not. Don't get me wrong. I just remember when I was a kid and they made us all get the chicken pox. I'll never forget that in my elementary school in my life in Lemon Grove. I'll never forget it. They made all of us get it, so we'd all be sick at the same time. It's kind of weird, but I remember that. Thank goodness now. I guess apparently they have a vaccine. I didn't get a chance to have that. Or that polio one where all those needles go in your arm, and now if you have a circle there for the rest of your life. Matt. Last question for you, Matt. Where are you from, Matt? I didn't ask you that.
I live in Los Angeles, and spent a lot of time in San Diego. When I was in college, I had a couple girlfriends who were down in San Diego. I've got some family down there, so I have San Diego is my neighbor to the south. I love your area. It's a fantastic place to live. So
San Angeles. Well, Matt, I only think about you and it thinks about Wally. I'm just going to bring this up is I've been watching that Comedy Store, little flick they've had on Showtime. And it reminds me of when me and Wally first met. We're at the Comedy Store doing this comedy. I mean, you just can't make this up. And then all of a sudden, 20 years later, I'm looking at some of our friends, at the Comedy Store doing their thing now and, on this show. So it's just funny to me, like, boy, are we getting old or we just know a lot of people. Or it's San Angeles, one of the two, because I was always up there a lot. But I appreciate everybody there. I appreciate, seriously, you coming aboard, making sure that we get the education from all sides. Estela, we'll make sure, again, thank you for making sure you get the voice of the people, because that's what it's all about. Jody, you already know about me and you, Jody. 65 Media, always making tackles.
Can I just add one more thing? If elected, I'll be the first Latina to be on a city council in the history of El Cajon.
And El Cajon?
Wow.
Yes. So I want some diversity.
El Cajon, not Tyrone. El Cajon, for real?
Yeah. So El Cajon, we need some diversity, and I'm going to bring that to El Cajon, being the first Latina woman city councilwoman.
Well, I know what I have to look at.
That is no easy feat to do. And listen, and tie that, I mean, your educational background and everything that you've done already thus far, I mean, that's just the Latina thing is a cherry on the top of everything that you already bring to the table.
Thank you, Jody. I appreciate that, and also appreciate again the opportunity, because our voices have to be heard. The economic, racial, and social injustices that we've talked about on for this past hour needs to be addressed. Not just on a national level, but here locally as well.
Agreed.
Matt, I'm gonna let you go off with a punch, because again, you're in LA, you got that LA look. Matt, why the hell are you so adamant about this no, though? Why are you so involved in it? How is it personally hitting you that you say, you know what, I gotta go yell this out?
Well, and I was hired to work on the campaign. Okay, so I'll say capitalism at its finest, and in the era of true disclosure. But seriously, I am a small business owner, and the prospect of getting hit with a tax, I've already told my landlord has already told me that any tax increase he gets, guess who gets it? Me. So that's not a good thing. And, I mean, it's just it is the wrong idea at the wrong time. And I told you that story about my dad and Prop 13, right? That has stuck with me. I'm 53, so I'm not that much older than you. That's stuck with me in the back of my head. And if you start unraveling Prop 13, California is already really expensive, and it just makes it more expensive. And again, if we were getting results, it would be something different. But to an $11.5 billion tax increase with about 30% going to education and no guarantee the money goes to the classroom, this is the lottery all over again. And it is not, we know how that worked out.
With an unknown winner.
Yep.
Well, I won't scratch any more tickets, but I'll buy some numbers. I'm a bet on the Chargers. No,
like Publishers Clearinghouse. Has anyone ever seen anyone win Publishers Clearinghouse? Never.
No, but I always loved it when they held up the big check.
Yeah, I wanted to
Me
be that
too.
person, but I never see that. You never see them really get it.
You got to go buy a magazine. That's how you got to.
That's what they
Oh.
tell me, but I never see anybody win.
Well, you guys, I appreciate you all. We're going to get this out of here. Have a happy Halloween. Make sure you turn your clocks again when I thought we already voted not to turn them, but I guess we're turning them again. So thank you again. We need some new bodies in there to make some changes right away, especially with
Good
this
luck,
time. It's
Estelle.
ridiculous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.